So you get me twice. Hope that's okay. Here we go. Oh, Alan, I am so honored to introduce you. Dr. Alan Lewis. How many medical doctors are part of our lighting industry? I can count one, right, that are there with us the entire time. And I mean, he's like, didn't start off in lighting. He has his doctorate in optometry, and then he has his PhD in psychological optics, physiological optics. Yeah, I knew I would get all these words wrong. But he's got so many multiple professional careers and honors that he has done. He's a fellow of the American Academy of Optometry. He's a fellow of IES, yes. Hall of Fame in the National Academy of Opticianry, which he told me is spectacle makers, right? Spectacle makers. Benjamin Franklin Society Award, Michigan Lighting Hall of Fame, IES Distinguished Service Award, and the highest honor that IES has, the Medal Award. Oh, we're so honored to have you here. He's devoted so much of his professional career to professional organizations, including the American Academy of Optometry. He's chair of the Ophthalmic Standards for American Optometric. I told him I couldn't say all these words, and he's not supposed to laugh. It's all these doctor stuff. CIE, oh, I can do that. Technical Committee, member on color, vision, testing, and transport. Did you know he was president of the United States National CIE Committee? Wow. Oh, this is interesting. He was president of the Association of Medical Service Corps officers of the Navy. He even told me he was called to do, what was it, delivery of a child. When you're called and you're a doctor, you gotta do it and you gotta step up no matter what. President of the Association of Schools and Colleges of Optometry. Accreditation team member of Optometry Council of Australia and New Zealand. Wow, international. Advisory board member of the National Eye Institute, which is part of the National Institutes of Health. And in our own IES community, so way beyond being a doctor. He was chair of the RQQ committee. He was members of the nomenclature, photobiology, chair of the medal committee, and the IES Board of Fellows. Standards Committee, which we always have to go to if we got a standards question. Senior Vice President of IES, but wow, he is a past IES Society President. Woo-hoo! You're amazing. How did you get all that done in that amount of time? It's way too many things, 2 different careers. He's also published over 50 research papers, journal articles, all of that. And without Alan, he's the one I go to whenever I want to know about contrast, illumination, how the cones affect rod sensitivity, that they're linked together. He also has written with the National Bureau of Standards papers on factors affecting human activities in the built environment, effect of lighting on environmental quality, and the establishment of illuminance levels. Article after article on the aging visual system, how light affects health. We all should take some courses from him. Lighting research and technology paper on the applicability of mesopic factors in the driving task. And then, of course, a journal articles on evaluating light sources for visual performance and low luminances used for general outdoor lighting. Can you even say that, all of that? It's amazing. and equating light sources for visual performance at low luminances. But that's not all. Visual performance is a function of spectral power distribution. Oh, amazing. He was contributor in the 8th edition lighting handbook on everything, color and vision and perception, non-visual effects of radiant energy. He's contributed so much. So personally, I've worked with Alan on many, many, many IES committees, and I so value his expertise. He is my go-to. I remember working with Alan on TM12, spectral effects of lighting on visual performance at mesopic lighting levels. Alan actually, I remember, gave me a chart which was not, it was the actual amount of light on the photopic system versus, I mean, yes, anyway. He gave me it versus relative. He gave me absolute values, and I remember that so much. How the cones and rods interact, especially how our visual performance responds to spectral distribution. Did you know that when you're adapted to lower luminance levels, light sources with different spectral power distribution will produce different levels of visual performance? Well, I learned all that from Alan. His knowledge about our vision, especially at night when we're mesopic vision, has helped us tremendously in evaluating all lighting systems. But my biggest memory is Alan's. He is my go-to for all glare issues. If you got issues, Alan is it. He and I worked together as an expert witness on a case where a farm tractor was going down the road at night with his field floodlights on. And do you know what happens with these farm tractors? They go into the other lane with their blades. And these two brothers are driving to work in the morning, early in the morning, and they were blinded by these field floodlights and hit the blade, and a terrible accident happened. What Alan did, he went and recreated it, countless measurements, and concluded there was no way that the driver could have seen the tractor. That's what you need. I couldn't do that, but Alan did it. So every time I'm driving down the road and someone with bright headlights is in the rearview mirror, I go, Alan, help me. What would you do? And with his research with that. But one of my favorite quotes from Alan is, glare from bright lights, Naomi, you'll like this, is the enemy of adaptation, visibility, and consequently, safety. If I had my wish, Alan, your research and knowledge would put limits on glare, especially in the nighttime environments. So Alan, for your endless contributions to the lighting industry, I'm so honored to present you with the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Well, thank you. People have often asked me how I got involved with lighting. And of course, the answer is, and it's probably true for most of us, is it sucked us in. When I was originally a clinician, spent 2.5 years in Vietnam, and when I realized how stupid I was by all the things I saw and didn't know how to fix, I decided, well, I'll go get a PhD, and then I'll know everything. And so I applied to there were only 3 programs in the country at that time. And I was in Vietnam when I applied, and I was back in the United States and still hadn't heard from anybody. And finally, about, I guess, the 1st of August, 1968, I got an acceptance letter from Ohio State, which turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Because at Ohio State, I was assigned as a research associate to 2 illustrious lighting people, Dick Blackwell and Glenn Fry. And anybody who ever wonders about the effect of mentorship, enough said. I was assigned to help them in their teaching courses. It wasn't where I was doing research. My research had to do with impaling the cortical cells of opossums with little microelectrodes. Absolutely nothing to do with lighting whatsoever. But Fry and Blackwell, because I had to teach their courses, taught me a tremendous amount about lighting, and that worked out pretty well. And then I had to teach a course called Radiometry, Photometry, and Colorimetry. And David McAdam invited me to join the colorimetry committee of CIE, and that's how I got involved with CIE. So gradually, my world is expanding. Eventually, Kurt Frank asked me to chair the RQQ committee. I had just gotten out of graduate school. I'd taken my first job in New York City teaching physiological optics. And that began my long, somewhat nefarious career in lighting. And I keep telling people I am not a lighting person. I'm a vision person. My interest in lighting is its effect on how people see. For many years, I saw patients, and I really needed to know how to answer the complaints that they had, many of which had to do with poor lighting, surprisingly enough. And so I became very aware of the need to quantify and understand the physiological responses to light, glare, color, reflections, adaptation, all that sort of thing. So I really had a wonderful time doing that. And eventually, of course, like all of you, got involved in IAS committees, where I learned a great deal more by sitting there and listening to people who knew a whole lot more than I did. And eventually, along with other kinds of research that I did some research in lighting, as Nancy has so nicely outlined for you. Interestingly enough, while I was at Ohio State, while I was heavily influenced by Fry and Blackwell, I was also heavily influenced by a third person who was there, who turned out to be a drinking buddy, Ron Helms. And Ron was in graduate school there at the same time getting his PhD. Of course, he went back to Colorado after that and influenced an awful lot of people sitting here in this room right now. And he still is a wonderful mentor to me. I really enjoyed and do still enjoy my work with IAS. It's a wonderful group of people. I know we're going to recognize tonight Howard Branston. Howard was another person who, because we had offices about 3 blocks from each other in New York for 20 years, got to know him very, very well, got to work with him on redesign of the lighting system in the Lighthouse for the Blind in New York. And I really admired Howard because he was the kind of a person who said, you know what? ADA says we have to do this, but that's a really bad idea, so we're not going to do it. We're going to do it the way I do it. And I really appreciate that about Howard. He was a wonderful character, but a brilliant, brilliant lighting designer. And I've learned a great deal from him as well. So I do want to thank everybody. People talked about families. For about 35 years, I traveled 150 to 200,000 miles a year going to meetings because I'm in 3 different professions, all of which had meetings and committees. Fortunately, later on in my career, I left active teaching and went over to the dark side and became an academic administrator, first a dean and then a president, which, while it had its downsides, the good side was I had control of the budget. And I could pay my own way to meetings, which was the first time I've been able to do that. That was pretty nice. So I do want to thank you here. Again, people like Nancy, Ron Gibbons, oh my gosh, all the people who have been so influential in making my lack of knowledge about lighting very, very interesting. And I've had a great deal of fun. It's been a remarkable group of people to work with, and I very much appreciate this honor. Thank you.